Now.
Take two. Well, hello, and thank you, Mariana, for allowing me to share about the Enneagram. I love it for me in my own personal development, and I've also loved introducing it to clients. I just met with a client this morning, and we were talking about her as a 4 and what all that means, and helping her to have some insight about the current situation she was in. I am an ACC. I did a full year with Mariana, finished up, was the end of 2019 before the world came to the pandemic. I'm a college professor, tenured. I was the tenured professor, 18 years in higher education as teaching art at a small liberal arts college. I also had 20 years in recovery, 21 years sober from alcoholism as well. And that's one of the things, both my teaching and the service to others within 12-step programs, that has led me to coaching, which I do believe is my highest calling. I've been super grateful for the transformation that's happened in my life as a result of coaching, and the Enneagram is part of that. My church had some involvement with the Enneagram, and I've had several friends that have been deeply steeped in it. And they're always talking about numbers and this and that. And some part of me was like, I'm not interested in that. I'll just put it off. But a good friend of mine is an executive coach, and all of his coaching is through the lens of the Enneagram. He only coaches CEOs. He's got a big 6-figure business, and it's all about the Enneagram. And I thought, you know what? I should look into this a little deeper. Let me see. Sorry, I'm trying to forward. I love this quote by Thomas Merton. Before we become conscious of who we really are, we must become conscious of the fact that the person we think we are here and now is at best an imposter and a stranger. And another quote by Dolly Parton is figuring out who you are, then doing that on purpose. And I think of these two things. There's a lot of what I do as a client with clients is helping them let go of the false self and to embrace their true identity. And the Enneagram is a tool in order to get there. So I love Tony Robbins always says you got to know the why to before the how to. And this is just some of the stuff I came up with, like, why bother doing this? Awareness of my own personal bias. One of the things that learning how to coach helped me to realize is that I don't know the answers for everybody. Now, that was hard for me as an academic, as a teacher. I came in like I'm the guy that knows the answers. I've had probably 20 years of therapy, and I was familiar with the therapist model of them figuring out what was wrong with me and telling me how to fix that. And the Enneagram helped me understand that I have personal bias in the way I see the world that's different than everybody else. And my strengths are not everybody else's strengths, and my solutions are not everybody else's solutions. And this really has allowed me to stop the comparison game, to improve my relationships, business success, right? To maximize my strengths, to minimize those things I'm not good at. And the Enneagram, if you really dig deep into it, it's uncomfortable. It's like somebody knows your junk in a real deep and powerful way. And it is humbling. It's not like a parlor game, like kind of like your astrological sign. Like finding your number is not like that. It's much more, it's much more challenging. And then I really have gotten a lot of pleasure out of it because I grew up with Star Wars. Are there any Star Wars fans out there? Anybody else? And I love the Jedi mind trick, right? Where they could read minds, they could persuade people to do whatever they wanted to do. I've been interested in hypnotism. I know Mariana has a background in that. And this is similar to that. It's really a discernment about people and the things that drive them. And then as a coach, here's the biggies, right? Building rapport where you instantly get a client, like you get them at a deep level very quickly. You know how to speak their language, like the things that drive them. The client I was just speaking with is a 4 on the Enneagram, and their core need is to feel special and unique, right? And if you knew that about a client, like think how powerful that is to be able to talk about how special and unique they are, right? It opens clients to new possibilities about who they are and who they could be. And then it helps them have compassion for others. The same way I was showing how it's changed me, this also allows for people to see that other people have a different lens that they view life from, and they have different core needs. Kind of similar to the love language, right? Learning how to speak others' love language and just not our own. And then super quick, you can offer a blueprint for growth and development that's tailor-made to them. So that's a lot of David speaking. How can you imagine this would impact your coaching business? You can either unmute or speak in the chat. I'm a teacher, so I'll call on people if you don't say anything.
This is Mariana. I would have loved to get a little bit more information of what it is about before I can kind of connect my wires in terms of how I could use it.
Okay.
Like I would like to get some meat before I answer this personally.
Sure. Okay. I will give you the meat, a little taste of meat, not the whole dish, but a little taste of it. Anybody else? Well, one of the things that I have noticed is that maybe about half of my clients are familiar with the Enneagram, and they'll even introduce themselves as an Enneagram 1 or 7 or whatever. And the fact that I know that, like, I know what drives them instantly. And it builds trust in the relationship because they know that I get them, right? And then I'm also familiar with the things they're familiar with. The what's it going to cost you? How much is it worth? I would say to really get deep into this, where it's going to be super useful, it's going to take you probably 20 hours. A very interesting study. It has not felt like a task or a super challenge. I'm still learning and growing, but those 20 hours are pretty necessary to have the groundwork for you to feel confident in using this in coaching. Having fun conversations with people, as you start to understand the Enneagram, talking to other people about it, allowing you to start to understand how they process the world and seeing it through the lens of the Enneagram. And then there's a couple of books. The Road Back to You. Let me grab them for you. This one, super easy to read. I recommend this to clients. It's fairly inexpensive and very popular. It's by Ian Morgan Crone. And it has a description of all the types, and not just a scientific description, but also like what that looks like in practice. Super relatable. Highly recommend this. If you're interested, just checking it out. I have about 15 books on the Enneagram, so to narrow it down to 2, but this one specifically for coaching. This is a $50 book, and I'm a little bit of a cheapskate, so it took a lot for me to buy it, but it's totally worth it. It really goes in deep. It's much more technical, dealing with the core issues behind each type and things that we can do as coaches to help clients once we understand what their type is. So here's your meat, Mariana. How many of you are familiar with the Enneagram? Like, is there anybody in here that knows about this? No? Anybody know their type? No? Okay. So Enneagram, Ennea means 9, gram means diagram, right? And there's these 9 basic personality types. And the key here is that personality means mask. And so there's some debate about whether this is nature or nurture, whether we come out of the womb with our Enneagram type, but almost all experts agree that you have one type your whole adult life. You don't switch from one type to the next. That's just who you are to the day you die. What happens though in health, that we become less like the stereotype of that type, and we have the capacity to become like the other numbers. Sometimes you've heard the story, if you grew up in the land of nails, if you grew up in the land of hammers, everything looks like a nail. And the types are like tools or masks that we put on to handle the current situation that we found ourselves in childhood. And so for me, growing up with a father that raged and a mother that really just wanted me to be a good boy and to kind of keep quiet, I became the peacemaker. And so I did whatever I could to maintain the peace in the house, including denying my own desires and my own feelings and my own wants, so that there could be peace and harmony in the house. Now, that's also my Enneagram type 9, the peacemaker. But that was a survival mechanism growing up. And even though I'm now 45, I still find myself unaware of my own desires and empathizing, having tremendous compassion for others, deep awareness of what they want, and being asleep to what I want. Now, I want you to imagine just for a second that there's a swimming pool by the beach, and you're swimming in this pool, and you know the 4 corners, the 4 edges of the pool and the bottom of the pool. You've swam in it your whole life, right? That's your Enneagram number, is that pool. But what really happens when you study the Enneagram, you become aware of those boundaries. But then the water level rises It allows you to swim in the ocean of possibilities. That's always going to be your pool, right? But you have access to the world, the whole ocean of experience. So the origins of this are just as mysterious as the Enneagram itself. We don't know. Different religions like to claim it as their own. There's evidence of it in the Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism, in Sufi mysticism, even in mathematics and philosophical traditions, and also with the Jesuits in the what you call the early desert Christian fathers, right? What we do know more recently is we have Oscar Achazo, who is kind of the contemporary father of the Enneagram. And then this Chilean psychiatrist was a student of his, and he adapted the Enneagram and added to it modern psychology. And he began teaching some Jesuit priests in the United States, other people around the world in the 1970s. And this was mostly within religious orders. Lay people were not allowed to learn this information. Why? Two things. One, they were afraid that it was going to be seen as like a parlor trick and not like the deep spiritual principle, but also because they were afraid that it would be used to manipulate people, much like a Jedi mind trick, to get them to do, say, whatever you want. Because it is powerful. Once you really start to understand how this works, you can find evidence of it. You can type people very quickly. You can then you can manipulate them based on their needs, their wants, say the things they want and need to hear. They can feel instant rapport with you, even though they don't know you. So the big three in contemporary Enneagram, Helen Palmer, Don Rizzo, and Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr is a Christian father and Christian priest. Helen Palmer is more like a psychic mystic. And so these three are the big, you'll see a lot of the Enneagram books. This one has a foreword by Don Rizzo, right? A lot of these books will have those people as contributors because the contemporary Enneagram really came from them, but that also came from Claudio Narano. So here's the figure of the Enneagram. 9 numbers with a 9 at the top, and connections between the 3, 6, and 9, and then this other figure that connects the other number. The circle represents wholeness, and so spiritually, as you move away from your number, then you actually are able to become whole again, complete. In the Christian faith, like Christ represents the circle. And so it's the completeness of everything, right? And the lines are where we go under stress and growth, and I'll talk about that in a second. So each number, once you find out your number, when you are doing well, you will move towards the strength of another number. And whenever you're doing poorly under stress, you will move towards the weakness of that number. So as a 9, because I can be I mean, the sin associated with 9 is sloth. And it doesn't mean I don't work hard. Anybody that knows me knows that I do work hard. But sloth can also mean that I can be easily distracted by things that are not my core importance. And so under health, I move towards a 3, and 3s are performance and action people. If America was a number, we love 3s. We love the go-getter, the super hard worker, right? The CEOs. And whenever I'm healthy, I will take action like a 3. And under stress, I become like a 6, which is a worst case scenario, fear-based person. And yeah, so that's kind of a litmus test about where I'm at as a person. And that's what the lines mean. Now, each number falls into a triad. You can see how the diagram is divided up over here. And we have this triad over here. They make their decisions based off of their gut, right? It's your first reaction to do something. They tend to act before thinking it through. And anger is beneath the surface. So then you have the heart triad. They're the feelers. You'll hear them talking about, we talk about kinesthetic learners, right? They talk about feeling, but also whenever I hear people talk about their feelings nonstop, like, oh, I feel this way. Oh, I feel that way. Oh, I feel this way. That usually means they're a 2, 3, or 4. And then they have shame that's waiting beneath the surface for them. And then 5, 6, and 7 is the head. These are the thinkers, right? Thinker planners, when they have a question about what to do, they're always thinking like, what do I need to do? And they plan everything out. They organize it. They have a strategy before they take action. And their weakness is they tend to overthink things. And then fear is beneath the surface. Maybe they can't figure it all out. Is there one of these that you feel like you relate to more in that one of these triads? Because this can help you on your journey to figure out your own number. Anybody want to answer in the chat? No? Okay. I'll keep going. So people are always like, how do I find my number? Well, one of the things that question I just asked, like, how do you make decisions, right? Do you make decisions based off of your gut? Do you make decisions based off of what you think? Or do you make decisions on how you feel? There are tests that you can take that will, you answer a bunch of questions and they say, well, we think that you're mostly this one or mostly that one or mostly this one. There's no perfect test. There's a lot of people that think that the tests are a bunch of hooey. And, but I like giving clients the opportunity to take a test. They think it's fun. They enjoy doing it. They're curious about it. It takes them about 10 or 15 minutes. I have a link to some free tests, and also there's some paid ones, right? The other thing is to study and contemplate. Reading The Road Back to You is a great way. You start reading those numbers, but this is the way it usually goes with the client. They take the test, they have a couple of numbers, then I will send them some information about those numbers. They read them and see which one they connect to. I always say that you know your number when it feels like somebody punched you in the gut, because that's really how it felt for me and for countless others. And of course, there's Enneagram coaches, people that will help you walk through the process to understand what your number is. And I do a little bit of that, but that's not my niche. And I have all of these documents for you, but here's a couple of the tests that I use. Now here's an outline of, here, I'm gonna click on this, some of the different components of the parts. And you'll hear these names, these character roles. These are not part of the original thing, but sort of a shorthand for understanding them. And each number has an ego fixation, right? As well as a holy idea, their basic fear, their basic desire, their temptation, vice, virtue, and where they go under stress and where they go under security or integration. That's the growth area. So for me, my big desire is wholeness and peace of mind. I really want peace. And I want peace so much that I will avoid conflicts and I'll avoid self-assertion. Because sometimes self-assertion means saying, hey, this is not okay, or taking a risk where people could be upset with me, or what's going to happen. I don't want to rock the boat, right? So that's the temptation that I have to overcome with my number. I'm afraid of loss, feeling fragmented, separate from others. Like I want people to like me desperately. And so sometimes I won't say the hard things that I need to say. And my holy idea, the gift of the 9 is love, compassion, right? Deep compassion. And I can get caught into daydreaming, right? So each one of these numbers, I won't go through all of them, but each one of these numbers, and I can, if people have questions, I can describe each one of them, but each one of these numbers have all of these associations with them. There's strengths, and then on the sort of the dark side of the strength is the weakness, right? There's lots of information once you start to figure out what your number is. There's lots of charts like this. Once you figure out your type, this can really help you in interpersonal skills and clients and interpersonal skills. Oftentimes they will find out their number and then they will share the test and information with their spouse to find out what their spouse's number is. And then even their children, and then they start to look at these do's and don'ts, and it helps them have a rubric for how to develop some interpersonal skills. I have a friend that is an 8, and it's scary for me to stand up to him because he's a little bit of a bully. 8s can be very dominant, and they think they're the boss. I have a friend that's an 8, and he says that when he walks into the room, he hears "Hail to the Chief." And I couldn't ever imagine that being my experience, but that was his. And so I was like, I can't even imagine what that's like. And he just says, I think that I'm the boss when I walk in the room. And they can act that way. And so for me to interact with an 8, I need to be able to stand up for myself and be direct. That's really what they need. And taking their anger personally, like it being about me, and the way they can be kind of too direct and sometimes off-putting, realizing that that's kind of who they are. And they do not like to be fenced in and not given options. So my son is an 8. And if you try to just power struggle through, it doesn't work. When he was a kid, I tried to get him to eat his vegetables. He refused. I told him he would just sit there until he ate his vegetables. And 5 hours later, he was asleep in his chair, refusing to eat his vegetables. So that does not work with an 8. They're incredibly powerful, incredibly stubborn. Instead, what works great with him is saying, hey, if you want to have dessert, you're going to have to eat your vegetables. It's up to you. You can choose to not eat your vegetables, but you won't have any dessert. And so now he has choice. And whenever he has choice, he can feel powerful in that choice, whatever he chooses to do. My daughter's a 1, right? Oh my gosh. Saying thank you for what she does, helping her have fun, because 1s are rule followers. They have rules for everything. And so helping them let their hair down and just have fun and enjoy life is a challenge. And they love it. They also, because they have all these rules and they're trying to be a good boy, good girl, holy camole, they if you question their integrity, they can really react, and they see themselves as the most responsible people in the world. So if you think that they're irresponsible, that really can upset them. Integrity is the most important thing to a 1, right? And so on the right, I have this sheet. I actually have this in my spiritual area just to remind me. And so this is one of the things that I offer for clients, and these sheets are available. I have a handout that has all of these things for all the numbers, both of these diagrams. Once you know what your number is, so that, so it's just a good reminder, right? Especially for me, notice feelings that you may be blocking out when you turn from your real priorities to substitutes, such as TV, food, errands, or chores. That's the sloth, right? My thing is I'll end up cleaning the house versus taking the action that I need to do in my coaching business or as an artist or whatever. I'll do the thing that is, I'll keep busy majoring in minor things. How are you guys doing? I've been chatting a bunch. You guys hanging in there? Any questions so far?
It's fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm just eager to hear more.
All right. So I'm going to have a chance for a whole bunch of Q&A at the end. So how to use this in coaching. So the client that's new to the Enneagram, right? This is essentially how we've been taught. I have a resource. It's been incredibly useful to me in my own journey, and I believe it may help you and even help me to help you more effectively. Are you interested? Of course they are, right? So I send them the packet that I will actually send you that has a little bit of the same introduction I just gave to you in it, has the links to the test. And then inevitably, people are really fascinated by it. Like, in the same way people like are interested in the horoscopes and all those other things, it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting connection. And whenever they find their number and realize all these things about themselves, they love it. And they love to talk to you about it. Typically after they've found their number, the next time I offer to answer any questions they have regarding the Enneagram. And they usually want to talk just about like, oh my gosh, this is totally me. This is the way I do things. This is the way I've always done things. Like, I can't believe they know all this stuff about me. And so there's a lot of that kind of listening. But for me, once they do have their number, that opens up a huge amount of resources. And this is a lot of how I've learned about myself in the Enneagram and the Enneagram as a whole, is you start with your own number. You start with starting to understand that at a deeper level. And then you kind of usually go out to your loved ones. Like, my wife is a 4. My daughter's a 1. My other son's an 8. My other son's a 4. And you start to understand about those numbers, right? And then I have a client that's a 6. And so I start giving them resources about 6s. And of course, I'm reading those resources as well. And so I become more attuned to what a 6 is. And just over the course of really the last year, I am starting to fully understand everything about these numbers, right? And the way they tick and the way they think. I have this thing called a power page. And I guess I can show you an example of that as I finish up here. But on this page, it has the VIA strength finders. That's from our coach training. I use that and I have them list their top 5 strengths. I have their, let me grab this for a second. I have their values from the core value worksheet. I still love that, their top 5 values. And then I have their strengths as their Enneagram number, and then their needs as their Enneagram number. And I help them, I give them some resources to read. And as they find ones that they relate to, they share those with me. And then they keep all this on a page that I keep in front of me. And then I reference that. So I don't have to constantly remember what's going on in the coaching sessions. I just want to encourage you that you don't need to be an expert at this. Like, you don't have to have all these 9 numbers and all the information memorized. My gosh, that would take a long time. But once you find those numbers, it's a reference point to be able to refer back to. Let me see. So I also use this in client intake forms, right? I may ask them if they are familiar with the Enneagram, and if so, do they know what their number is? And that can build curiosity in a client. And if they do know their number, oh my gosh, it's like a client giving you a very clear essay on their deepest fears, needs, and desires. And you can imagine how useful that would be, right? Like, it allows you to go deep very, very quickly. With clients that already know their number, I will hear in the conversation things that really sound like their number. And oftentimes it just helps them to see that written in a resource, like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. And there's strengths associated with all the problems they're having. So my 4 client, she really, she was telling me how in some ways she wants to be the star, but she's also afraid that other people would judge her. And this is so stereotypically 4. Like, this is exactly what all 4s go through. And they think that they're unique in that experience when they recognize they're not, and that's just part of the challenge of their personality, that those things actually go hand in hand. They want to be the star, but they know as the star that they're judged more heavily than those people in the background. And so they have to reconcile that within themselves. And relational problems, my wife, okay, so I'm a 9, and I tend to say, I totally understand what you're saying, right? That's the 9 thing to say, because it means that you and I relate to you. My problem is so much empathy and compassion that I feel your feelings. I don't even know what I feel anymore, right? I feel your feelings so deeply that I don't even know myself. And so she was very sad about her daughter going back to her ex-husband's, and how painful it was. And that is part of a 4-2, the melancholy. And so me, as a good 9, I would say, oh, I totally understand how hard that is. And she'd say, no, you don't. You don't get me. You don't understand. Like, I'm a mother. A mother shouldn't be away from her daughter. And I said, well, I do understand. You know, I'm separated from my ex, and I don't see my kids go to them. It's like, oh, but it's different. You don't get me. Like, you don't understand what it's like to be a mom. And we would have this fight. We had this fight probably a dozen times. And when I discovered this in the Enneagram, I want to be one with another person. I understand you completely and fully on a deep level, right? That's part of my core need as a 9. Her as a 4, she doesn't want that. She wants to feel unique and special, right? She doesn't want to feel like we're totally the same. And so what I was trying to say in a loving way was coming off as minimizing her significance. And so when I changed the language to like, wow, that must be incredibly hard. I can't even imagine what it's like as a mom to have to say goodbye to your daughter like that. She was like, wow, you finally totally get me. And we stopped having the fight. So I recognized that I was using my language for what I want, the oneness, to someone who doesn't want that language. And it resolved this fight that we had had so many times. I felt like, my gosh, she's minimizing my ability for empathy and compassion. And she thought I was minimizing her story and making it commonplace and not exceptional. Okay, that was way too much talking. I do want to encourage you as we move into the question section, if you would like my handout that I offer, just send me an email. I'm not going to sell your email to anything. It's just easier that way. If you can send me an email, just say, I would love the Enneagram handout on it. I will send that handout to you. It has the information here that I've given you plus some extra. This is what I send to clients. You're welcome to use it, change the logo, whatever you need to do to make it your own, and send that out as a resource. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, maybe, if I can figure out how to do that. How do I do that?
On the bottom, there's probably a share screen.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm looking.
I think they changed it. I think it's at the top.
Sometimes this does this. Wait a second.
It says stop share.
There it is. It finally came up. Perfect. Okay. So what questions do you guys have? Oh, there's a whole bunch of chats. Oh, I'm finally seeing the chats. I was not seeing chats earlier.
Because we were sharing a screen.
Yeah, I see that.
But if it would be something that I needed to bring to your attention, I would have.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you. This was amazing. Yeah, perfect.
Great. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. My wife is pinging my phone. I think the dishwasher repair is coming. 1 second. Okay. Let's see. Florida higher education. That's good. Some Star Wars fans. That's good.
David, I have a question.
Yes.
How are you? So thank you for this. I thought it was really cool and interesting. And a lot of the things that you said, I'm a certified trainer in Clifton Strengths.
Yes.
Talked about your top 5 strengths. It actually it resonated with me in that respect. But I'm wondering, are you familiar with the Clifton Strengths, and have you used that like as a parallel or a benchmark for the two? And how has that worked for you?
Yes. So I think that there's overlap between those things, the Enneagram. What we'll find, so I use the VIA Strengths Finder because it's free and a little sort of cheaper and easier for clients that don't have the Clifton Strengths access.
I need to know what breaker the dishwasher's on.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. We've had our dishwasher being repaired, not worked for the last month. So as a family of 8, now the dishwasher repair guy has shown up today. So are you there?
I am.
Okay. So one of the things that I've noticed is that their strengths and their values often line up with the Enneagram information. There's lots of parallels. And so I think that there's a strong connection. Those things, when you start to see all this on one page, you have a page like this, you have it on one page that has all this information, it becomes really clear that there's this kind of thread that runs through a personality versus just having one point of reference. It's not as strong, at least in their own mind. And even in my mind, as I did this work of like who I really am.
Yeah, so I'm in higher education as well here in Toronto, and I use the Clifton Strengths with my students, and I translate that into business context. And sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit of a fortune teller when I go through their strengths and they're like, oh coach, I get it, right? But I would love to try the Enneagram and try to go a little bit deeper into who they really are versus just what they're strong at. But also with Clifton Strengths, it does give you your weakness. So I connected with you when you said that you could be seen as a bit of a daydreamer, where futuristic is one of my top 5. And that's the downfall, right? Is that we see this big vision ahead, but sometimes we can have our head in the clouds.
Yeah. I think I'm probably the same. I'm trying to remember. It's like visionary or futuristic. Like I'm that persona, and then I see that lining up in the Enneagram as well, right? But the solution to all of that is action for me. So the Enneagram says, okay, this is your strength, but the solution is the thing that you're actually weak at, is like you have the vision. So I need to push into taking direct action to make it happen.
Right. Well, thank you, David. I want to give
Yeah.
someone else a chance to speak. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? I'm so sorry that I didn't see all these great things in the chat. And Karen, like you have no idea the doing the dishes for a family of 7 is, for the last month, has been a nightmare. So my wife is up here in a panic. Any other questions?
Can I ask you something, David?
Yes.
Emma from Athens.
Hi, Emma.
Thank you so much for the presentation. That was wonderful information. And I really love the examples, especially the one with the 9 and the 4, your wife. I found that really, really relatable. I have a kind of, I don't know, question popped up when you're using the Enneagram. Is it ever possible to have a composite personalities? Do you ever come across that? Does it happen at all?
Yeah. So sometimes there's some confusion between numbers. There's some numbers that seem very similar, like 7s and 3s. It can sometimes look alike. And a lot of times the thing with the test is that people take a test and then it'll give you like percentages of a bunch of numbers. And you're like, oh, am I like a 5, a 7, a 9? What am I? And really what it means is these are things that you're kind of ticking off. And when you read those descriptions, it's really the one that like, I'm a 9, so it talks about hitting me in the gut, right? Because that's my triad. But some, you know, if you're a heart triad, it'd like hit you in the heart, like, or like, oh, this just, I think this is so right. If you're in the thinking triad, 9s do tend to over empathize and become whatever they need to be in the environment. And so 9s are the biggest composite number. The reason that's at the top of the diagram, because they become like the other ones. So if I'm in a situation where it needs to be sort of intellectual and emotionally distant, I'll become a 5, right? Or if I need to be the loyalist and like the person who is there to support everybody, I'll become a 6 based on what I empathize the needs are of the situation. And so 9s are the most composite of all the numbers.
Chameleon-like.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
They're asleep to their own needs and desires. That's whenever I read that, I was like, oh yeah, that's me.
Great, very interesting stuff. Thank you so much. I haven't taken the test yet, so I don't know what I would be, but I have a few inklings from the slides that you showed and spoke about. So thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
it's incredibly powerful. I think it's mystical, and also, I mean, I think psychologists are trying to figure out like how it all works. And of course it has synthesized in with contemporary psychology. But I think there's a reason that the spiritual teachers kept this a secret for so long, because it's so powerful. They wanted the power for themselves in some way.
Right, great. Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mariana wants to know, what number do you think resonates with her the most?
Well, I mean, the thing is that I think that this is what it is. I think that when we read all those numbers, we can relate to all of them, because all of those numbers represent human existence. But it's not about that. It's about which number pulls you the most. Because I have, like we have similar tests, you know, computerized tests, not on Enneagram, which was my first introduction to Enneagram, but other things. And that's what they tell you. They tell you, you go with what pulls you in the most. And that's, so when I was reading it, one number pulled me the most. And I said, this is me. Like, no, totally, right? And so I'm wondering, I don't know, I don't want to take over the class in any way. So if you don't feel that it, you know, I was just like through the chat, if anyone wants to play this game, then we could play this game.
And that's super, so that's part of the fun of it, is like once you start to understand it, then you know, my wife and I are always like typing people. We type people on TV shows, like I wonder what type this character is. I wonder what type this character is. And I think that that's part of the fun of it. And as you do that more, you start to understand more and more deeply. Yeah. I'm really sorry. This went longer than I thought it would. I'm super grateful for the opportunity to share. If you have questions or whatever, please let me know, but I have a meeting I have to go to. Okay, I'm sorry.
So we can stick around a little bit. I'm going to stop recording. David, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
This is amazing. You'll definitely be hearing from me. Really
Okay.
appreciate it. Very generous.
Yeah. I have ideas about your number too, Mariana, but I'll talk to you about that later. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Bye.
Bye.